Hey y'all, it's your girl Free Monique. So I thought I would drop a short series about isolated religious communities and some of the traits they exhibit. The purpose of me making these videos is to give some more context behind my experience, because I'm going to be talking a lot about my experience, my education journey, which I just did a video on, and I'm getting ready to talk a lot more about that. Also, I'm going to be talking about leaving difficult situations and then how to get on your feet again, how to survive. I'm big on survival because that is a huge part of my story. I actually was a part of several isolated communities. One was religious, but the other isolated communities I belonged to had to do with disability and had to do with poverty. So it's a very multi-layered experience that here I am now at 40, finally, in full control of my life and getting a lot of things done and making power moves. So I'm really proud about that. But I just wanted to explain why I was making these videos. Again, it's just to give you some more context. We're going to jump into the characteristics now. All right. So, number one, strong religious beliefs. Now, usually, an isolated religious community will hold on to a set of rules or a doctrine that everyone in this specific isolated religious community lives by. Like they live it through and through. They wake up, eat it, breathe it, sleep it. Everyone understands what those rules are and they follow it with each other. Now, outside of that little bubble, when they're out in the what we call the world, when they are um, going to school, going to work, going to the library, going, if anybody does that anymore, going to a restaurant. If they're doing all of these, what we think is regular things, you may not necessarily see anything odd from this person right away when it comes to their personal traits, right? When we're talking about it on an individual level. But when they're with the group takes on a ton of traits and you see it magnified with the individual in that group. So, for instance, here's an example. This is a social example, and I'll make a whole video just about socialization because that's a thing within itself. Um, in one particular isolated religious community that I'm very much familiar with, a person of the opposite sex would never in the congregation sit next to a person of the opposite sex if they were not married or dating. By doing that, it sends a message to the rest of the congregation that these two people are married or dating. And if you're not married or dating, everyone's looking at you like, "What you doing? What you doing? You're not. What y'all doing? You're not. You're sending a signal to us that you all are together. There should be a seat in between these two individuals. Otherwise, it just looks like they're dating or they're married." So that is very normal in that space within the congregation. Take that out of that context in the real world, and it doesn't matter. Nobody's questioning that. If this was a work situation, a work setting, and two people of the opposite sex are sitting next to each other, nobody's even thinking twice about that. Literally, they're both individuals are living their best life. They have no interest in each other. One could be married and the other person be single, and nobody's questioning it. No one's looking at them. Nobody's thinking twice about it, right? That's how you know that this isolated religious community has some sort of law or code that is very different from the outside. That's how you know you're in an isolated religious community, is if it has that level of social law, like unspoken law. Another example is being separate from main society. So from the mainstream society. So like the term, "We are no part of this world. You are separate from the world. We are separate from the world. I am separate from the world. I do not belong to the world. I am not of the world. You are not of the world." These expressions, these terms are commonly used in Christian sects. There are branches of Christianity that are smaller religions that tend to take this scripture out of the Bible and adopt it 100% in the physical world. So literally, they will not associate with anyone who is not of that sect because they consider themselves no part of the world. If you have not gotten baptized, if you have not turned your life over to this particular religion, the people in this particular isolated religious community have nothing to do with you. Okay? And that is a characteristic of an isolated religious community. It's us versus them. Okay? Being separate from the world, to them, they want to fully embody that. They will not want to be in social situations by their own choice, by their own doing, with people who are not part of their group. They need to be out there and even still kind of like command this respect, almost like, if someone on the outside is celebrating a birthday, we'll take birthdays for example, because there are actually many religions that don't celebrate birthdays, that are of isolated communities. Let's just say a person belongs to an isolated community. They don't celebrate birthdays. They expect that everyone around them, they tell them, I don't celebrate birthdays. So when you come to them and you just say happy birthday, they're like, I don't do that. It's they command that you also, you know, respect that, and they want to make sure that everyone is aware so that they can protect themselves in this invisible bubble in a way, right? This is very normal to a person who belongs in an isolated religious community because they are doing everything possible to keep themselves pure in their mind, or follow certain rules to please whoever their higher power is, or whatever they believe that is. Okay. Next is the way they dress. Is usually they have a set expectation within the isolated religious community for how to dress. And so those codes tend to carry over on the outside for the most part when they're not around other people of that community. They tend to, dress in their mind more modest. Or there might be like a particular piece of clothing that you'll see them wear that's very characteristic of that community. Some things are recognizable, some things are not. It could even be, how they wear their hair. It could also be having a beard or not having a beard. There are certain physical things that you can tell for an isolated religious community. Just to shorten it, I guess I'll say IRC. IRC. How about that? Another major characteristic is language. How they use language. Isolated religious communities, or IRCs, will have certain language that they're constantly using that's very normalized within their society. Outside of that society, you rarely ever hear that type of language. And if you do, you can point them out. You can say, oh yeah, you must be in this religion, because no one, says this in the traditional world, right? In the modern world. Sometimes it'll be extremely outdated language. Sometimes it'll be a complete, just different language, or a created language, something that they've created together. And so they all follow this. It's almost like, kind of can compare it to, not to make fun of anyone, but when I was a kid, Pig Latin was a thing, right? So like, you're speaking Pig Latin to your friends and you're talking about the person sitting next to you, but you're speaking Pig Latin. That's kind of how it is in an isolated religious community. You just, kind of speak this Pig Latin. And then when you leave, or, when you're outside of that context, and maybe it's like two of you, but you're among people who are not of that, you just start speaking that language to each other. And everyone looks at the two of you like, this is odd, right? So that's kind of what the experience is like. Another major characteristic is how the people are when they leave that community. So if one common experience that people have when they're part of an IRC is that they will leave that community, and it could be for various reasons. It could be by choice, or it could be because they were shunned, and shunning is a common practice in IRCs. Okay, so shunned is another term for like excommunicated, ostracized. You're just removed. No one is allowed to talk to you. It's code. Everyone knows they're not supposed to talk to you, because now they're looking at you as if you are dirty because you have sinned or you have done something against that particular code or rules or laws that they have. And you're not being, in their eyes, repentant for whatever reason. It's possible there's no recourse. It's possible that you may not even be able to go back. And in some cases, you can go back. You can repent and go back. But anyway, you leave and you are a fish out of water. You don't know how to act. You don't know how to behave in the traditional modern world. You are away from your entire social bubble that you had within this IRC. Because you're no longer a part of that. The language, the clothing, the ideas, the mindset, the laws and the traditions and the codes, all of that is stripped from you, and now you have to deal with you. You have to figure out who the heck you are. It's disorienting. Okay? It is literally like you are starting over. It's like you're being born all over again, but you're born as an adult, and now you're expected to function as a normal, healthy adult out here. And it's hard. It's very difficult for people who are completely removed or decide to walk away from an IRC, because they have a very difficult time in the beginning adapting to the normal traditional world. They are easily identifiable because they look like a fish out of water. You can tell they are very awkward. Like the way they reason, the way they draw conclusions is a bit odd. Because most of the time, I'd say 98% of the time, these IRCs were working towards a common goal. They believe they were chosen for whatever reason, depending on their higher power. If they have a higher power, more times than not, they have one. They believe they are special, and they were working towards a goal. Many times, these IRCs believe in a doomsday of some sort. They believe the end is coming. And so, because they were actively working towards that, and when you leave, it's kind of like either you're going to believe that that's still the case, that this end is coming, or you're not. If you don't believe that, then I tend to believe that you're going to be actively seeking, some sort of truth, right? And I say truth loosely because that is a common word used by IRCs. They weaponize that word. So we got to be careful with that. But you're trying to seek some sort of reality. You're trying to figure out what really is the reality. And then others of you will, still have that belief system, but you're just no longer part of the social structure. So you still may be working towards the end, like, operating as if the end is coming. And so, doing that while you're alone and being away from that social group, I can see how that can be very difficult. Say like one of those long canoes and everybody is rowing, like one of those little long boats. Well, now all of those people are gone. It's just you. So now over time, I could just imagine it being a little bit frustrating, because you're like, wait a minute, what really am I working towards? Because no one else is on this boat. It's hard to push it. You got to reassess. You got to pause. And that's the best thing that you can do. So, yeah, these are really the main things. These are the main characteristics. This is how you know someone is part of an IRC, or this is how you know if you're in one, or have experience being in one. The biggest common thread of all of these groups is that there is a control factor, whether you see it or not. There is control. And I say that because no healthy individual should be able to leave a scenario like that or a situation like that and be left with scars. In theory, a healthy religion allows you to literally walk in and out. You should be able to serve your higher power anywhere. You should be able to have a relationship one-on-one with your higher power without a middleman. And if somebody is telling you that you have to do this thing and you have to do it this way because I said so, you've got to investigate. You've got to do your research. You've got to think twice about that. Because at the end of the day, you were born in this world and there was no other individual there. It was you having this experience, you and your higher power, with you being born in this world. And that higher power has been supporting you this entire time. If you even believe in that, right? If you even believe in a higher power. If you're atheist and you don't believe in any higher power, you know that there is something, special that happened when you entered this earth. And for someone to take control or try to take control of you and what you're doing and dictate your every move and tell you that you need to behave a certain way and do all these things so that you can get some sort of reward, you've got to question that. You've got to question that. Question everything. We've got to critically think because it's not healthy, right? We are all free agents. We have our own brains, and that's the most precious thing that we have. Religious community is not always a cult. I need to say that loud and clear. It's not always a cult. All religions are not cults. A lot of them are. A lot of isolated religious communities are cults, but not all of them are cults. So we need to know that, right? Because once we start saying things like that, then we immediately label, and that's not productive if you don't know for sure, right? So that's why I want to go through some of these traits. That way you can easily identify what those are. And then also for yourself, you may want to ask yourself, are you part of one? Because it could be a thing that's holding you back. It could be the thing that can help you if you utilize it the right way and if it's a healthy situation. Because health is wealth. If we fully take charge of our mental health, our spiritual health, our physical health, our emotional health, then we win. It's as simple as that. You thrive in life. But when any of those areas are compromised, when they are traumatized, you're not going to do well. You're not going to be able to fully, truly succeed or reach your highest potential or self-actualize according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We want to get to the top of that pyramid. We want to be able to fully be who we were meant to be and fully, embrace the world that we're living in and enjoy ourselves. So, so I don't want anything to hold you back. So I needed to throw that in there. I'm going to end this here, but I'm going to make some more videos about this topic. And if you have any thoughts or questions, things that you'd like to hear more about, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I did mention that I will make one more about how socialization works in and out of IRC. And so that's pretty much it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, peace.